Hey, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to all my Cloud Scholars out there. My name is Kieran Tross, and you have touched down at the Cloud Scholars Podcast. So in today's episode, what I want to talk to you about is cybersecurity interview questions you need to know. So whether you are trying to get into IT and you're looking in from the outside, this video is definitely for you. And even if you're in IT and you're trying to elevate to a higher ranking, you might want to just get into cybersecurity and you're a system administrator or your PC technician, this video is for you as well. So I'm going to provide you a bunch of questions here, and hopefully by the end of this video, I'll earn your like and your subscribe. So how is this video going to play out? So I'm going to ask you 15 questions. The first 5 questions I'm going to ask you is I'm going to ask you questions that are technical questions. And I'm going to answer those questions for you and talk you through the process of how you should answer those questions, how you should think. Then I'm going to ask you an additional 5 questions, which is going to be the situational behavioral questions. Now, these questions, it doesn't matter what, part of your career you're in. If you're new into IT or if you're in IT or you're in cybersecurity, these are the type of questions that you're going to be asked. So you should be prepared for these type of questions. And then finally, I'm going to end off with some general cybersecurity awareness questions. This is probably more for newbies, but it's still a good thing for you to understand. Even if you're in cybersecurity for a little while, you may even encounter some of these questions as well. All right, so let's go. Let's get started. Okay, so first question is, describe the steps you would take to secure a wireless network. So some of the things that you want to do is secure a wireless network. This is more technical, so you want to name off some stuff like when you get the wireless router, you want to change the default username and password. You want to disable SSID broadcasting. For any of you that don't know what SSID broadcasting is, SSID is your wireless name. So your wireless name would be like my Wi-Fi 12 or something like that. And when people come to your house and they say, hey, what's your Wi-Fi? And they look it up, that's your wireless name. So you want to disable the broadcasting. And you can do that when you log into your wireless router. You can disable the broadcasting. Now, just so you know, even if you disable the broadcasting, you can still find out that same wireless name if you have the right tool, like a wireless sniffer that can tell, look for every Wi-Fi that's out there. And then it's also going to be able to see if the Wi-Fi isn't broadcasting, it can still tell it. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, what's the point of, disabling the broadcasting? Hackers are educated, right? Some are more educated than others. So what you want to do is, hopefully you run into a lazy hacker and they're like, you know what? This is too much hurdles. I'm not even going to bother with them. I'm just trying to get somebody who's easily compromised. So you want to give them some hurdles in order for them to be able to achieve their goal, which is compromising your information. But disabling the SSID is still a good way to prevent any issues within your wireless network. So you want to use strong encryption in key phrases, and I think I mentioned before was use a strong admin password. So that's very essential that you use that and you change your credentials when you first get it. All right, the second question is, how does a man-in-the-middle attack work, and how can it be prevented? So a man-in-the-middle attack is when a cyber attacker intercepts the information between 2 different parties. So party A would be you, party B would be you logging into something like Facebook or Google or something like that, and they'd be able to intercept it. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how can they intercept it? If I'm on my laptop and my phone, how are they able to intercept it? The reason why they're able to intercept it is if you go and connect to like a public Wi-Fi. So if you're at the library, airport, Starbucks, or some other place that provides wireless network, when you go and you sign in and it says, hey, you want to use the Wi-Fi here, they actually have a whole bunch of information that they tell you, like, don't use, said this is, an open network. Try not to use any information, or try not to log into any information that is personal, sensitive information. They tell you that. You may have not read it before, but they definitely tell you that because they know what hackers will do. They'll go on that same Wi-Fi, and what they'll do is they'll use a tool so that this way they can see all the network traffic that is going on in that Wi-Fi network. So when I first started in IT, I was probably 19 years old. But even before that, I was learning in school. I remember going into a Barnes and Nobles, and I would connect my laptop to the Wi-Fi, and I would run a tool, and I would be able to see everything that was going on. I saw people, logging into Facebook. I saw all types of stuff. Now, I didn't use it to do anything, but I just was learning. So I just like, if I learn something, I want to test it out. I just want to geek out and stuff like that. So, that is how people use the man in the middle attack. And some of the ways that you can prevent that is one, you go into public Wi-Fi, don't use any sensitive information. If you're going to search for something, search for like food that you want to, get something to eat, or look for a recipe. That's fine. Who cares about that? Encryption, using HTTPS websites, two-factor authentication, and email verification is another way of preventing man-in-the-middle attacks. Okay, question number 3 for technical questions. What are the main differences between a virus and a worm? So I've never gotten this question before. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but I know people that have told me that they've received this question. So a virus is a type of malware that attaches itself to a legitimate program or file, essentially infecting it. And a worm is a self-contained program that spreads independently without requiring a host program. So these type of questions, you should know these type of threats. You should know, like virus, worm, DDoS attacks. You should understand those different types of threats, so that this way you can speak intelligently when you have the interview. So number 4. All right, this one is you're definitely gonna get this one. I'm pretty sure of it. What is the principle of least privilege, and why is it important in cybersecurity? So least privilege is a concept that is said over and over and over. When I'm talking to clients, we constantly talk about least privilege and reviewing, employee access and all that other stuff. So least privilege is giving people just the right amount of credentials in order for them to do their job. So you're saying, okay, you need access to this folder and this folder, and you need access to these email distribution groups, and that's all I'm going to give you, and you can work. That is what least privilege is. So if you want to think of least privilege, let's say you have a company that's, you guys cut grass, right? So you may have like a team of 3 people, and you're saying, okay, your job is to mow the lawn. I'm not giving you any of the other tools here. That's for the other 2 people who are working here. You're just going to mow the lawn. That's the only thing you're going to do. That is essentially what least privilege is. And the reason why you want to do that is because if a user's credentials get compromised and a threat actor comes in and takes over their account, if you have least privilege, the person only has access to this amount of information and has access to this part of the network. Now, if you were to not be doing least privilege, and that same person who got compromised had access to this part of the network, this part of the network, this part of the network, and they had access to this folder and this email distribution group and had an owner of this mailbox, you see where I'm going with that? Now there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's compromised, and other people are sending their information to these different areas, and then now you're going to have a bad day. So that is what least privilege essentially is. Okay, so explain the concept of a virtual private network and its security benefits. So a virtual private network creates a secure and encrypted connection between a user's device and a remote server or network. So from a Azure perspective or cloud perspective, what you have in the cloud is you have a virtual private network, and you may have PCs there. You may have, storage accounts that have access into that virtual private network. And what you're essentially doing is you're saying, okay, this is my virtual private network with my PCs and my databases. And if anything needs to get into that virtual private network, they need to go through a network security group, NSG, right? A network security group or a firewall. And that firewall is permitting traffic to go in and out. So let's say you go to a club and there's a bouncer at the door. That is essentially your firewall, your NSG, your network security group. And your firewall checks the ID and says, okay, you're permitted to go in. Checks the other person's ID. Nah, you can't get in here. Go away. So that's exactly what your virtual private network is. And then when they get in the club, that is the virtual private network. That is VIP, or whatever you want to call yourself. That is exactly what your virtual private network is. And then if you need to get out of the club, you're going to go right past that same bouncer in order for you to get out the club, because that is exactly what your NSG, your firewall, is going to do, is permitting where traffic can leave and where traffic can come in. So that's your virtual private network. All right, so hopefully you're still with me. You got through the first 5 questions of your technical questions. Now we're going to talk about situational and behavioral questions. Now, when it comes to situational and behavioral questions, it doesn't matter if you're first year in IT, it doesn't matter if you're just getting in cybersecurity or if you're 15 years in. These are the type of questions that you are going to get, because these questions are more about how do you handle situations. It's not necessarily technical because not everything in IT is technical. So if you are working as a consultant, not everything is technical because you need to understand how to work with difficult people at times, or you may have a teammate that may be doing something stupid. So here we go with the first question. How do you handle a situation where a team member is not following established security protocols? So what they want to do is see exactly how you're going to handle problems. And if a team member is not following the established security protocols, what's some things you're going to do? So how I would answer the question is, first, I'd have a conversation with the team member. You want to give that person the opportunity to change. All right, they don't change. Then I would say, okay, well, then I'd probably, bring it up to my boss and say, hey, I'm seeing that we might run into this issue. I think that we need to take a look at how we're working through whatever security protocols we're doing because some of our engineers aren't doing things the right way. Now, let's say if it's your boss that's the one that's causing the problem. What I would do, the third option is I would say, okay, let's implement some tools. GPOs, right? GPOs are great group policy objects. So that this way you're enforcing that security and you don't have to look at the bad guy and you're saying, hey, this is a security measure that we should have in place. Or if you're thinking from a cloud perspective, now use Azure policy so that you can enforce things. So you're going from talking to somebody, dealing with the manager, bringing an escalation. You're showing the escalation process. You're also showing that you also know how to deal with superiors who are doing things incorrectly. And then third, you're now bringing in your technical skills by bringing up different tools that you can use in order to make sure the guardrails are there within your organization. Okay, so number 2 is walk me through the process of responding to a security breach incident. So every company is different how they deal with security breaches. Some things that you want to talk about is, is there a ticket open for that security breach? Is the information provided in that ticket? Did you go through an escalation process? How was the mitigation when you found out what was compromised? Did you take control of that laptop, see exactly what was going on, wipe the laptop? Also, if you did some type of network segmentation, hopefully, where did you remove that specific network? Let's say site B was the one that was compromised. Did you now discommunicate that site from all the rest of your organization? Those are the things that they're thinking of when it comes to how to respond with a security breach incident. All right, so number 3 is describe a scenario where you had to balance security requirements with user convenience. So you're definitely going to run into this at times. I worked at a hospital system. Doctors do not care about security. I'll tell you that right now. They will have keyboards, and under the keyboard would be their password all the time, so that plenty of times, or their medical assistant would be signing in with their credentials. So you want to talk about how you would respond to these kind of situations. How do you go up and talk to the person? If you have to talk to the doctor, or perhaps you'd bring it up to the doctor's boss. You want to bring up different scenarios of what you did in order to handle this type of situation. Now, with me, I would literally go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, we have these security in place. You having your credentials all over the place will cause a problem. Sometimes the doctors say, what, Kieran, you're right. I apologize. And then sometimes they just wouldn't care. So that's the kind of stuff that you'd run into. But if it's not a bad thing to say, hey, I brought it up to my boss. That is the reason why your boss is there. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to say that, but you also want to make sure that you're taking the initiative and you are having that conversation with that person. So some jobs is a little different. If you say, hey, we talked about this in meetings in my last job. My boss said he doesn't want us talking about it. He wants to talk about it because, he's a director or he's a chief and he feels like he's at the level to have that conversation with the doctor because they'd listen to them. And that's fine. But you want to make sure that you're answering in a way that they feel like, okay, this person has some experience with this and is not just, fumbling the bag and just being scared. You definitely don't want to come across like that. The next one is tell me about a time when you successfully educated non-technical staff about cybersecurity best practices. So this is just really talking about how do you handle those conversations with people who aren't technical. So a doctor will never talk to a patient the same way they'll talk to another doctor. So you want to talk you want to dilute the conversation so that this way the person is able to understand. So when you're talking and you're answering this question, just make sure that you were able to, bring analogies into, the conversation, or this way the person was able to understand exactly what message you were trying to drive to them. Next one is explain how you would approach securing a network technology or system that you have limited experience with. So what they want to know is, you get a new piece of technology, you need to get it set up. There are certain things that need to get. You have a deadline, and they want to see exactly how you're thinking and how quick you will learn technology. So let's talk about different things that you would do. Like, just say, okay, I go read through the documentation. I would go on YouTube and look up some videos. Things like that. They not necessarily I'm going to run to somebody and talk to them and ask them how to do it. That's a no-no. You definitely want to answer the question that way. So you want to just talk about how you would go about trying to understand the information. Even if you say, hey, I'd probably, after work, I'd watch a couple of videos just to get a better understanding of how the technology works. So that's something that you can put down as well, because then it shows that you are going the extra mile. All right, so we've reached the last part, which is the general cybersecurity awareness questions. Okay, so one is, what is the purpose of a firewall and how does it work? So I talked a little bit about firewall earlier when I was talking about the virtual private network and the bouncer and stuff like that. So that's essentially how it works, right? So a firewall's purpose is to make sure that you are blocking threat actors and only permitting certain people to have access to your network. And that's essentially how it works, right? So it's making sure that, hey, we have these rules here, and I'm going to say yes to this network traffic, yes to this network traffic, and no to this network traffic in order to keep your information safe. Number two is, why is it important to keep software and system updated? And the way you want to answer this question is because there's always new threats that are out there. And when you have your software and your systems updated, they have the latest critical patches. So if there is if there is a compromise that happens and Microsoft says, oh man, we weren't aware of this, Microsoft is going to release a patch so that this way that new compromise is no longer effective. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your systems up to date, because the latest patches keeps your organization safe. Explain the concept of zero trust. Okay, zero trust is huge right now. Everybody's talking about zero trust. If you're going to deal with any type of cybersecurity vendor, they're going to be having something in their tool set that's going to be zero trust. And what zero trust is, it challenges the traditional perimeter-based security model where you would have a firewall and then everything outside your network is a threat. With zero trust, it's saying everything inside your network is a threat. So it's already seeing your internal network as being compromised. So the ways that zero trust works is verify everything, make sure that you authenticate. So if you go from one network to another network, if you're using a SaaS, when I say SaaS, an application, you have to re-authenticate. Even if you're on the VPN, you still have to authenticate in order for you to be able to access that application. Least privilege, micro segmentation is another thing where you would have, let's say, three networks, right? So you have network A, B, and C, and the way you would have them set up, it's just not like, okay, everything is all combined together. There are different networks and there are different firewalls, so that this way, if network C does get compromised, network B and A no longer communicate with network C until you're able to get that whole thing sorted out. So those are the things that you want to understand when it comes to zero trust. All right, so what steps can individuals take to protect their online accounts from unauthorized access? So this is talking about like your Gmail, your Yahoo, or whatever other account that you have. So you want to do strong passwords. Try not to use kids' names or anything like that, because if you're on Facebook, you're probably posting pictures of your kids. Or Instagram, you're probably doing the same thing, and you're putting your information on. Hackers are seeing this information and saying, okay, well, let me put the kid's name in. You don't want to put anything related to the year. So we're in 2023. Don't put a password with 2023 on. I mean, people do this all the time, and it's just easily hacked. You want to do things like MFA, multi-factor authentication. You want to change your passwords regularly. A lot of people don't do that. And you don't want to use common passwords, and then avoid public Wi-Fi or sensitive activities. For sensitive activities, excuse me. All right, now the last question is, what is a phishing attack and how do you prevent it from occurring? So a phishing attack is when a threat actor sends an email to you and tries to act like they're somebody else. So they may send an email to you and say, this, hey, your PayPal please sign into your PayPal in order for us to verify your credentials. And what they would do is send you an email, and they would have an email in the same format as PayPal would have it. But their from address is what you really need to pay attention to. So you would click on the email, you'd go to a website that looks like PayPal, but if you look at the URL will say like PayPal1 or something like that. But a lot of times people don't pay attention to that. And you can put your credentials in. What you're really signing into is that hacker's server. Once you put your credentials in, it captures that information. And then when you click sign in, it would now refresh, but it would actually send you to PayPal's website. What happens is people will say, oh, the heck happened to my Wi-Fi? It must have glitched. All right. And they put the password in again, and they go into PayPal, and they'll be like, okay, well, I'm not seeing anything wrong here. And they'll go on with their day. But the hacker just got your information. So phishing attacks, you really need to pay attention to who's the email coming from. There are a lot of different tools that you can use that will, make sure that when the emails come in, that it will stop phishing attacks. So in organizations like Office 365, they have an anti-impersonation policy. So this way you can put the credentials for higher level individuals like your chiefs, your directors, and definitely people who are in purchasing or finance. You will want to put them in that same area. So this way, if somebody tries to send an email saying, hey, can you please change my routing information for my bank account? Hackers will go on to LinkedIn and see who is in part of finance or purchasing. And they're going to say, okay, that's a person who's in it. Now, who's the chief? Okay, this is a chief of human resources. They'll send an email as if they're the chief of human resources and tell that person, hey, I need you to change my direct deposit to this location. And that person who works in finance is now going to say, oh, okay, let me just change it. But they didn't really look at that from email address. So phishing attacks are very common, and they're always catching somebody. So it's really important for you to look at the address, because they can't impersonate that. So, they can definitely have it come up in a certain way that looks similar, but if you look at the address, it's always going to tell you exactly what it is. So just pay attention to that kind of stuff. All right, so we have literally got to the end of this video. I want to thank you so much for watching this video here with me today, here at the Cloud Scholars Podcast. I really tried to provide you all the really good information. If you have any questions or comments about anything in this video, please leave it in the comment section. Or if you have any questions that you think that the community should be aware of, and you can put it in the comment section. Definitely help each other out. It's not just about me, but it's also about you providing some information amongst each other, so that this way we all can grow. So that is the end of the video. If you haven't liked or subscribed to this channel yet, please do. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, so this way I can help more people out there and continue to provide you some great content. So until next time, you already know the goal here. Once again, my name is Kieran Tross. And I want to thank you for watching this video, because my goal here is to get you from scholar to consultant, and of course, consultant to expert. Thank you, and see you next time.